Hi all, our notable game today carries on logically actually from yesterday. We looked at one of the classic Kasparov-Karpov games yesterday from the first World Championship match between them in 1984, and it went spilled over into 1985. It was such a long match. It was the first to 6. In this first World Championship encounter, Kasparov was down in the match 4-0. Karpov had secured a quick lead, winning games 3, 6, 7 and 9. And there was a series of draws, and then on game 27, Karpov claimed his 5th point, so 5-0 up against the legend Kasparov. So he could have really wiped out Kasparov in this first match. And then there was a marathon struggle after. On the 32nd game, Kasparov beat Karpov for the first time. And there'll be links in this video. I'll give a link to the playlist for the 1984-5 match if you want to see some of these games video annotated. I'm hoping to at least look at all the decisive ones. After a long series of draws, Kasparov won game 47, which we looked at yesterday on the channel, and game 48. So game 48 is the last match of this aborted match, which made it 5-3. After this game, it was aborted. I'll give details at the end of this game, more on that. But let's have a look at the classic game 48. Kasparov was playing white against Anatoly Karpov. So this is 8th of February 1985. Played in Moscow. So e4 from Kasparov, and Karpov chose the Petrov defense. After the knight f3, we see knight f6, ultra solid. So maybe Karpov had been a bit annoyed losing the game yesterday and wanted an ultra solid defensive system against Kasparov. Just a draw today for sure. Now we follow the most trodden path. Knight takes e5, d6, the knight goes back, knight takes e4. So this is one of the most solid approaches. Knight c6. This is actually the top most used move according to Livebook in this position. Bishop e7 now. c4. Now quite often knight b4 here is played. For example, knight b4, bishop going back here, then after castles knight c3, the game continues like that. But here we have knight f6, which is also popular. Knight c3, black castles usually here. h3, and again, usually now in this position, knight b4 is played. There's 85 games in Livebook. So this is a slight departure now with d takes c4. And it doesn't quite fit the earlier moves to be solid and as reliable as possible. This maybe, although it isolates white's queen's pawn, gives Kasparov a little bit of energy in the position and initiative, a little bit of dynamic potential. If we look at the most trodden move here at move 10, according to Livebook, 85 games, knight b4, and black basically now plays d takes c4 and gets a blockade on d5 here. This has seen a lot of games from this position. So black's really just setting up a fantastic looking blockade on d5. It looks ultra solid. So maybe, but the move order is important here. D takes c4. You might think bishop takes c4. The thing is here, the blockade's not so easy to set up with knight b4. In fact, so it's a different idea from Karpov. He plays knight a5, bishop d3. So we've got the knight temporarily inconvenienced on a5. We have got the isolated queen's pawn, and we have got bishop e6, as though d5 is still interesting here. So how different is this? Rook e1, and the knight goes back, and you might not think it's such a big deal, but actually this is you could argue this is a slight improvement for white, this position. White can now just afford to play a3 here tactically because of the h7 issue. If black takes on d4, we just snap that off, and then we've got bishop takes h7, and we're winning the queen. So, okay, black plays a6, and then we have bishop f4, and now queen d7 is played, And here, this runs into a move which you might think is a little bit unpleasant looking. Can you see what white plays in this position at move 16? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, it's a forcing move, knight e5. Yes, it's slightly unpleasant. Black doesn't want double pawns. If he retreats his queen to anywhere like c8, then takes. This queen doesn't really want to go on the e file, because then we might run into things like d5, the rook staring at the queen. This could be very, very unpleasant. Something like d5 here. For example, this looks like a nasty pin, etc. So, and the thing is about this position, I mean, this might be a sign of tiredness, that the blockade not only has not been set up, but knight e5 looks dangerous. If queen takes d4, then white can still use the h7 trick, even though the queen's temporarily protected, by playing knight takes c6 first. Takes, and then bishop takes h7, again winning the queen. So it's an unpleasant looking move. So Karpov is actually forced into a concession here. After knight takes e5, d takes e5, his defensive knight on h7 has been dislodged. So h7 is slightly more vulnerable than usual. Now white uses that here. He takes on d5 first, and gains an important tempo. Looking at the h7 pawn. And this is really quite pleasant, this position. Now black, you might think, should consider both g6 and h6. Karpov chose what perhaps he thought was the most solid, g6. But it does invite some other forcing moves. G6 does invite some other forcing moves. So maybe h6 should have been given also some consideration here. I just want to absolutely check this position. There's a flip up on the engine perspective between g6 and h6. H6 at the moment is actually given us slightly. It changes its mind basically, but okay, there is something like using the f5 square. That's a concession, the f5 square, which maybe is the major issue with this. That bishop f5 might be useful. Okay, so it's a toss up between those two defensive choices here. I mean, both make a concession of some sort. We'll turn that off. A bit distracted now. So g6 was played. It does make a concession on the dark square. So the opening hasn't been a great success. That variation away from the beaten path earlier has led to a position which white has something to play with here. He has initiative. He plays rook ad1. And yeah, this extra on the queen and threatening something to exploit the pin here is unpleasant. So black tries to reinforce the d5 bishop. And now this forcing move, bishop h6. And now we have rook fd8. But you see this x-ray on the queen? It's used resourcefully here now to play a key move which actually helps weaken black's king side considerably. This pawn chain is fairly solid at the moment, the classic pawn chain here. But there's a move that Kasparov plays which disrupts that pawn chain tactically. It's tactically justified. Can you spot what white plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, you might want to pause the video. Okay, e6, it disrupts the pawn chain. Black is really compelled to take with the f pawn here. If he takes the bishop, then we've got that x-ray use, but bishop takes g6, smashing black up. That's terrible. So basically, f takes e6 is forced, and now we have, guess what? Now that the pawns are reduced to 2 here, we have, I hope you can guess, or pause the video. Okay, bishop takes g6. Black cannot take this. He'll just be mated if he takes this. So black plays bishop f8. Now, tokenly, yeah, black hasn't lost a pawn or anything. It looks as though it might not be the end of the world. But structurally, it is bad. If you look at the number of pawn islands, this is a significant feature that black's king has been slightly peeled open. There's that g-file potentially for usage if you imagine a rook lift. And the number of pawn islands and targets has increased. That pawn is less safe. This pawn is less safe, just on their own, on an island, on their own. We have bishop takes f8. Rook takes f8. And now bishop e4, challenging the bishop on d5. But also now, with the bishop sorted out, a rook can lift to get to that g-file. So we have rook f7. And now rook e3, a classic rook left to get to the g-file. Now black defends that in advance with rook g7. We have now rook dd3, so it's supported potentially. Now, both rooks are supporting this rook g3, that g-file issue. We have rook f8. And in this position now, we have rook g3 looking at that rook on g7. And you might think for a moment, oh, hang on, bishop takes e4. Doesn't work because rook takes d7. We're winning the queen here. We're taking that rook now, so that's just winning for white. So this is perfectly playable. Rook g3 here. That bishop's not hanging. King h8 because of that pin. Now we have queen c3 creating another pin. So we've got two pins going now. Two pins are better than one. We have rook f7. And now we have rook d e3. And now white, if he can get in queen e5, that queen is looking not just pinning the rook, but also the b8 square to come into black's position, potentially via b8, which could be dangerous. We have now king g8, getting out of the pin there. But now queen e5. And can you see what white is actually threatening? It's not directly queen f8 because of rook f8. But just to get you into the position a little bit, say black did a5. Can you see what white can do here? If I give you 5 seconds, starting from now, you can make this queen b8 forcing move very, very strong here by playing. I hope you can see it. 5 seconds to pause the video. Yeah, rook takes g7 first. And now queen b8, there's no rook f8 defense. The king has to come out and actually gets mated off the check. It's actually getting mated in this line. So that's pretty dangerous. So black didn't play a move like a5, played queen c7, addressing the queen b8 issue. Rook takes g7 is played. Rook takes g7. And now another clever move in this position is played, which basically wins a pawn. Can you see how to win a pawn here? 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, bishop takes d5. Now black cannot afford to take there because queen e8 is checkmate. And he doesn't want to drop e6, you know, we just take e6. So he takes the queen, but white can play here, not just a recapture of the queen, but actually now, I hope you can spot this check. Bishop takes e6 check. So he's emerging into a very favourable rook and pawn ending here. 3-1 over here. Okay, it's a 3-2 over there, so black can potentially, you'd think, have the prospect of creating a passed pawn, but it might be easier for white here. Rook d7, we have b4, trying to fix down with a single pawn both of these guys. And the rook can defend on the third rank at the moment to any attack of a3. We have king f7, the rook goes there anyway now. Check, king h2. We have g4, white starts to advance his majority over here. You see after this b5, it's pretty evident that black has to waste time now with c5 to try and wrench open a passed pawn. f4. C5, black does that. Rook d3. not minding the king stepping there. The king wants to get to the centre here to help maybe attack these pawns first. King e7. We see this. King coming towards the centre. b4. A takes, king e4. The king is able to step over to help against this pawn, potentially. It's blocked here, and now we have king d4 to c4 as an idea. Or king d5 to c4 is an alternative route. And here, yeah, this wall against the black king means actually this pawn can be won. So here now white is 2 pawns up. This is getting critical. Not all rook and pawn endings are drawn. Someone mentioned as a quotation. It might have been by Tartko, all rook and pawn endings are drawn, but not here. f5, nifty defense of the g4 pawn. The king comes back. Okay. Now, after king d6, we have rook e8, king d7, and now a nice move here, it seems. Very, very good looking move. Can you see what white plays here? Okay, h6. Very dangerous pawn. It's only 2 steps away from queening. King f7. Rook c4. Now rook e4. King d6. Check. Check. And now, using the h6 pawn, rook g7. Yes, this can transition into a winning king and pawn ending very easily. If the king gets the opposition here, then this pawn's going to be queening. If you see that, I'll just quickly show you. This position is easy. So black cannot afford that. Check. Check. Very interesting move to try and get a stalemate. If king takes d5, it's stalemate. There's no move. But Kasparov has noticed that, yes. And we have this other stalemate trick here. Yes, Kasparov notices it again. After king c3, yeah, Karpov resigns here at move 67. So, this was 2 losses in a row for Karpov. Now, these notes are from chessgames.com. You can get them on Wiki as well. It's well known. I was around at the time of this match, actually. I remember it. It's like an endless marathon match at the time, because it was 1st to 6. There's loads and loads of draws. Anyway, at this stage, the FIDE president, Florencio Campomanes, made an unexpected and controversial decision. He called the match off at the press conference, at which he announced the decision. Campomanes cited the health of the 2 players, which had been put under strain by the length of the match, despite both Karpov and Kasparov stating that they prefer the match to continue. Karpov had lost 10 kilograms, that's 22 pounds, over the course of the match. Kasparov, however, was in excellent health and extremely resentful of Campomanes' decision, asking why he was abandoning the match if both players wanted to continue. It would appear that Kasparov, who had won the last 2 games before the suspension, so this game and the game we saw yesterday, felt the same way as the commentators, that he was actually now the favourite to win the match despite the 5-3 deficit. So because he appeared to be physically stronger than the opponent, and in these last games he appeared to be playing better. So basically the match had lasted from September 10th, 1984 to February the 8th, 1985. So it was aborted after 48 games, making Karpov the what we call the de facto, in effect, winner, but technically. But a new match was scheduled to take place later in 1985, to the same year now. So, and also I remember there's footage actually of the press conference, and Campomanes, Kasparov is having a go at Campomanes, and Campomanes starts repeating the same word. I remember there's footage somewhere that might be on that press conference. It's a classic one, controversial at the time. Yeah, Kasparov was not really amused by the decision to call off the match. But these are the interesting things in chess history. But it was quite a powerful game for Kasparov. But it seems in this game, Karpov didn't follow the well worked out blockade routine. You could call it almost a routine way of blockading, to sort of just get knight b4 in, take on c4, and then rerouting knight back to d5 to be reinforced with bishop e6. With a standard blockade, you should have been able to hold with black, and you'd think they want to hold with black and win with white, generally speaking, at this level. So it seems that the blockade never happened. Kasparov was given some dynamic opportunities to actually fracture that classic pawn triangle with this e6, and after that fracture occurred, of course he's going to use the g-file. His queen infiltrated to an ideal spot on e5, not only helping pins and g-file, but this entry to b8. Then black was basically losing one of his pawn lines, the e6 pawn, through a tactic. So leading to a very bad rook and pawn ending, where Kasparov simply mobilised his king towards the centre, won the b pawn to be 2 pawns up, and was able to convert this. So an excellent game anyway, at least from Kasparov's perspective, but Karpov didn't seem to play as solidly as the opening, promised. He didn't set up the routine blockade on d5. But nevertheless, so an interesting match. I hope you got something from this game. And yeah, we'll look at any other decisive games we've missed from this match before going on to the next one as part of this notable game series. Hope you've enjoyed it. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.